Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou ki tēnei hui me te kaupapa o tēnei wā, practical tips, techniques and resources for teaching outdoors. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Monica Kuhn. I'm one of the learning specialists on the project team for Te Pūtiaki Manatanga, and I look forward to us all learning together for the next hour. Let's start with karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tāra tāra ki tai. Ehi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, te hei Māori ora. Kia ora again, and before we get started and with the topic of the webinar and our speaker, I just quickly would like to remind you that this webinar, like our other webinars, is recorded and we will upload it to YouTube with the participants' faces blurred out. We will also share the recording on our website. This will allow you and anyone who couldn't make it today to come back and rewatch the session. We will also upload any relevant links to our website. Now, as usual, please use the chat to ask questions, which we will pose to our presenter towards the end of the session. Let me introduce our speaker for today. This is Tali Jellyman. She has been the Kai Whakaako, the education team leader at Sanctuary Mountain Maunga Tautari since 2019, where she's also been the lead guide and for a while has covered the visitor center role. She has a Master of Biology and Science Education outside the classroom with honors. Prior to her role with Maunga Tautari, she held several educator roles like the secondary schools educator for Auckland Zoo, educator at Hamilton Zoo, and the education program project lead for Rotorua Island, and educator for Tawharanui Regional Park. So lots of experience working with students in the culture and heritage space and outdoors. Tali's experiences, resources, and her tips are super useful to culture and heritage educators, whether teaching outdoors or indoors. So I hand it over to Tali now.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Monica. And good afternoon, everybody. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Tali toko ingoa. On the screen there, my title slide, I just wanted to show you where I actually am. I was hoping to be sitting outside in the beautiful weather where you could see the mountain behind me, but alas, it's absolutely pouring with rain today. So enjoy the photographs instead. So Maunga Tautari means suspended or hanging mountain. This name was given to the maunga by the tohunga of the Tainui Waka, who looked out across the Waikato landscape and saw this mountain. The mountain looked as though it sat on a pillow of clouds or was hanging from the sky. And that's pretty typical at this time of year in the Waikato region. So those of you that might be from the Waikato or be familiar with the Waikato will know about the fog, particularly at this time of year. Before I begin the details of today, I just also wanted to acknowledge that what I'm going to share with you today comes from a place where I have learned from lots of experience, but also through others. So I stand on the shoulders of giants, amazing colleagues that I've worked with across the years, amazing managers, teachers that I've worked with, and I've learned a lot from the students as well. So I just wanted to say that before I begin, that I stand on the shoulders of giants. So to bring you into where I am, the red marker that you can see there shows you where Sanctuary Mountain Maunga Tautari is, and some arrows are going to pop in just a moment. Here they come. There's one. So I started out teaching in Auckland and at Auckland Zoo, as Monica has mentioned, moving to being able to teach out on an offshore island on the the eastern end of Waiheke, and then up at Tawharanui Regional Park. And now I'm down in the central Waikato area at Sanctuary Mountain. Cool, zoom on in. So Maunga Tautari, we've zoomed in there now, and you can see a dark green round shape blob. The dark green represents the beautiful old growth forest that is on the mountain, a podocarp broadleaf forest. So we are a mainland island sanctuary surrounded by 47 kilometres of pest-proof fence. We're located around about half an hour from Cambridge, that's just above us on the map there, half an hour from Te Awamutu, half an hour from Putaru, and about an hour from Hamilton or Rotorua or Taupo, for example. But this mountain has long been a significant site of natural heritage. So it's been protected since 1912. But of course, these days we are running the conservation project, I should say, in partnership with local council, mana whenua, and with community and landowners as well. So this slide is drawing you on into my classroom. It's not really mine, it's everybody's. But this is what the environment is like. And I largely teach all of our programs outdoors here on Maunga Tautari. And there's a few of the beautiful taonga species shown there. As the saying goes, never work with animals or children. And we try to do both, and we try to do both outdoors in a natural environment. But it's the best office you could ask for sure. Anyway, I was like to just share with you as well. This is an architect's drawing of what our new education centre is going to look like. So at the moment, there are some holes in the ground out the window that I can see. And by the end of this year, hopefully a building like this will be on that site. And that's going to really enhance what we can do with our education program. And another little image is going to pop up for you. If you were on the decking of this building or in the visitor centre above and looking out across the landscape, this is what you would see. The beautiful ngahere, our pest-proof fence line, and of course we're surrounded by a sea of farmland, and we couldn't do the work we do without all of the relationships involved in the project here. Anyway, I was thinking about the timing of this webinar and sharing the tips and techniques that I have for teaching outdoors, and I sort of started to think, well, it's not the best time of year in actual fact for that. And case in point today, it's absolutely pouring with rain outside my window. However, I think talking about it today gives us the opportunity to think and plan perhaps for the better weather opportunities come the end of term 3 or term 4 later on. And also, it is timely in the fact that we're heading towards Matariki. And this year we marked the first public holiday in New Zealand around Matariki. And of course the whetū, the stars from the Matariki star cluster, are associated with aspects of well-being and the environment. So for us, looking at Pahutakawa down the bottom there, that's the eldest child of Matariki. And that star reminds us to reflect on the past year. And from a conservation education point of view, that's also reflecting on loss. And also then what can we do to turn that loss around? Here at Maunga Tautari, a little gorgeous picture will pop up for you. We also have 2 takahe chicks at the moment who were hatched actually about 18 months ago. And one of them is called Waiti and one of them is called Waita. And Waiti lives in our wetland, which is of course associated with fresh water. You might have seen also that the Environment Aotearoa report has come out. And this report this year has been written with a lens of Matariki as a framework. So it could be something interesting to have a look at there. And also the Science Learning Hub is doing a series on Matariki with respect to this document as well. So check that out if you're interested. And today is Outdoor Classroom Day, and it's actually a global phenomenon. And I hope somewhere in the world there is better weather than what we have got going on here. So on this slide, what I'm sharing with you is a page on the Department of Conservation website. Tash, a community ranger, was going to be with us today as well, but unfortunately was unable to be part of this webinar. So she has given permission to share some of the resources that are available on the DOC website with you today. But on this Teach Outside page, there's lots of links, but it also outlines how spending time in nature, learning outdoors, can actually help with our well-being. So it says, time in nature can build resilience against stress and adversity, can improve concentration, learning, creativity, and cognitive development, can increase self-esteem and self-discipline, and foster a love of the natural world, increase cooperation and self-awareness. So I just thought I would share a couple of my own personal stories around this with you. So it reminds me of a day that I was out on Rotorua Island, actually in Auckland, and we would finish the day walking back towards the ferry, And about a 10-year-old, year 6 boy was walking alongside me and he said, "Miss, did you know today was the second best day of my life?" And I thought, wow, that's a really, really cool statement. And of course I asked him, what was the first best day of your life? And he said, "Well, miss, I've met the All Blacks." So to me, I thought, you know, if we come second to meeting the All Blacks, then it's been a really good day for that student and probably a number of the rest as well, which is fantastic. And also in light of some of the conversations that have been happening in these webinars as well about accessibility and that sort of thing, I've also found that, you know, it's really important to engage with teachers, as I'm sure all of you do, around health and safety and the learning objectives of the class and anything you might need to know to help you to plan. And, you know, quite often there might be 1 or 2 students that the teachers are a bit nervous about taking outdoors in terms of behavioural challenges, or perhaps neurodiverse students. But often at the end of the day, those are the ones where teachers will come up to us and just say something like, "I've never seen that side of that student before." So engaging with them outdoors can have a really positive impact in those sorts of ways. All right, next one. So also available on the DOC website, I just thought I would share with you some activities that are available to download. They're sort of pick up and go, introductory experiential style activities. So for anyone that perhaps would like to try doing some activities outdoors that you haven't done so before, it could be a way to pick something up and give it a go. So these cards are available in both English and Te Reo Māori, and they cover things from well-being, but also cross-curricular links as well. So those are there to either have a go or perhaps something that you can suggest to teachers who are looking for environmental activities associated with what they're doing with you too. This is another set. This was, I think, was the first set they put out last year. Down the side of the slide, you will see what the card actually looks like, both front and back. So there's an experiential activity on the front of the card, and on the back of the card, it gives other curriculum links or other activities related to different curriculum areas that you can use that experience to expand the learning from. So I just wanted to share those few with you. And I think there's a couple more there. If you're delving even further into environmental units of work, the previous slide just showed you a few examples of those. There we go. The links, by the way, are being provided, I think, in the chat also. So you can go back and capture those if you wish. So there's a whole set that work together in the environment resources based on the inquiry cycle. So focus more towards the primary, intermediate age groups there. And one more. Here we go. So there's also a booklet or posters available which have ideas for using Te Reo Māori language that relates to the environment, which could be an additional layer to what we're working on too. Cool, thank you. And I also just wanted to share this slide with you. If you focus on the graph, mainly on this slide, I know that a lot of organisations have been looking into well-being and doing research around this. I know Zealandia has done research in this area, for example, but that's also been a piece of work that Sanctuary Mountain has been doing. We have a wellbeing coordinator here. So she's been designing workshops. So for example, for corporate groups, we've also had aged care groups come through and do them, all sorts. So on the graph, basically what that's showing is the results of a profiling of moods survey. So when a corporate group came in to do a workshop, or perhaps it was our volunteers, they were given a survey to start with, which asked them how they were feeling, and it asks about these different mood states in lots of different ways. So you go through and you answer that first, then they spend the day with us doing a workshop around wellbeing, and at the end of the day, they repeat the same survey. And I think it's quite remarkable to see what happens. The grey lines are before, and the orange lines are after, bars, I should say. So if you look at anger, anger has reduced after a day doing well-being things in the environment. Anxiety has reduced. The amount of confusion being felt had reduced. Depression had reduced. Tiredness, fatigue had reduced. And vigour, feeling invigorated had increased after these days. So just really cool to see that data, I think. Okay, so we're going to dive a bit deeper now into the tips and techniques that I have around teaching outdoors. So a lot of these things are actually things that you probably are already doing, and they are also relevant in the classroom or in a special classroom space you might have at your organization, in a gallery space, for example. In my experience, I've taught indoors and outdoors, and in places like at the zoo where for a time we may have used a classroom space and for a time we're outdoors. And what I've learned along the way is that preparation is the key. And all of the tips and techniques, all of your strategies that you use as an educator become even more important in the outdoors to keep everybody safe and to keep everybody enjoying the learning experience. So know before you go is key. I also learned that in an outdoor first aid course as well. The key takeaway I had from one of my outdoor first aid courses was be prepared before you go. So I used to put on my health and safety for schools, for example, going out to Rotorua Island. You're on an island all day. It's a big day. It's a long day. It's a physically active day, and it can be really, really hot in the summer. So I used to say, please do not bring sugary drinks. Do not bring the bottle of Coke that day. Bring your bottle of water. And the reason that I would stick to that is because if you're having too much sugary drinks in that situation, it can lead to heat exhaustion. So being prepared beforehand is really important. Cool, carry on. And of course, there are things that schools will be looking for in this space as well. And once again, it's not just in outdoor situations, but certainly where I work today, I do get schools asking for these specifics before they bring students. And that is, do you have a safety plan? Have your activity leaders, your educators, got relevant current skills, experience, qualifications, first aid kits, certificates, and the like? Have we got relevant experience? They might be asking for an accreditation. And of course, now will be the new ELC. Are we an ELC or LEOTC provider? Cool. And so to help with preparation before a trip, particularly around the health and safety systems side, of course, you'll be familiar with the TKI website. And many of us have been under that tab down the side there, the ELC home, but that's sitting under the umbrella of EOTC. And there is a toolkit for health and safety management within that that you can look at. Today, I'm coming from the point of view where I teach outside for a whole day. And so the health and safety in a forested mountain environment, sometimes we're going near water, sometimes we're crossing a road. My paperwork needs to be in proportion to the risks that are here on this site. If you're thinking about learning outdoors, it might be that you've got an activity you already do indoors or a special taonga that you normally share with students indoors, and you might like to just take it outside and sit under a tree. Obviously, the health and safety paperwork for a situation like that is much less, I would imagine, than a full day in the outdoors. So it's proportional as well. Cool. All right, so health and safety a little bit further. There is a booklet that's one of the links on the EOTC page that we were just looking at, and there's lots of examples in there to help with looking at your health and safety systems. But the first bullet point I've put there is outdoor leader or assistant leader. The reason I've put that first, and it does mention that in the booklet as well, is making sure that if you're going outdoors, particularly in these bigger scenarios, that you feel supported, that you've got the experience to teach outdoors. So when I first started teaching out on Rotorua Island, it was a learning experience for me. I was leading the trips, but I had somebody with me who had more experience teaching outdoors, who had also worked for DOC. And it gave me the confidence to try it and to know that if something did go wrong, there was support there. Over time, what happened is I became that person with more experience and with the confidence to lead outdoors. And then other educators who were newer to the organisation would come with me, and I was the experienced person in that scenario. So I definitely think making sure your educators have support to try these new things is really crucial as well. Of course, there's legislation to look at when it comes to health and safety plans, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that too. Things like taking all practical steps to ensure safety, identifying hazards, mitigating them, developing emergency procedures, training employees, and registering incidents. Cool. That's the important parts mentioned. Good. But also for me, when I am talking with teachers beforehand, I think it's really important that we consider how we are being role models in the environment as well. So when we are going out into a nature space, into a scenic reserve, to a sanctuary, what are the behaviours that we need to consider? And of course, there's the New Zealand Care Code, Environmental Care Code. There's actually 10 points in that care code, and I've just put 5 there as a starting point. But one of the things we model to the students, of course, is to keep to the track when we're in the forest. Take only photographs, leave only footprints. We do have some rubbish bins and some recycling bins and worm farms and things here at Maungatautari. That's for the full visitor experience, but for my school groups, I ask them to pack in and pack out. And the reason I do that is because I'm modelling, if you and your family go to a scenic reserve or to another sanctuary or to the beach, wherever it may be, think about what you're doing with your rubbish. Pack in, pack out. Protecting plants and animals, of course, using appropriate toilets. It's all fairly obvious, really. Of course, it might be that cultural values need to be taken into account as well. So I've put kaitiaki there as one point, but it might be other cultures too. So there may be different needs with the school group that's coming to you. And of course, you can think about that and why it's so important to have those conversations with the teachers beforehand. Te Aki promise, well, that's really the tourism way of looking at caring for our environment. And I've also put visit the Kiwi Way there. So this is a video that Doc made. It's on YouTube, so you can search that one up. It's really a tourism focus as well, but it's a quick, light, easy video that could be used to perhaps create a conversation with students so that they can prepare to go on a trip as well. And that's what the next point is all about. I would really recommend encouraging teachers to involve the students in the process for planning if you're going on an outdoor trip, so that they can think about what they think is important, put their thoughts forward as well. So Kiwi Guardians is a doc program, and there's an action medal with activities about becoming an expedition leader. And for me, because we are at a pest-free sanctuary, biosecurity measures are also important before we go through. Just gonna have a little sip of water here as we change. For those of us, or all of us, have been working through changes to COVID settings as well. And in an outdoor environment, the Education Outdoors New Zealand group have done a really thorough job of providing advice and making sure that that is meeting the government's guidelines and the guidelines for schools as well. So this is just to share with you a place to go if you wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that as we change through the different traffic light colours at the moment. Okay, tips for outdoor education programs. So once again, a lot of these things probably apply to your indoor programs as well, but I just find them that much more crucial when you're outdoors. So of course, consider the weather. I'm glad I didn't have any school groups booked in today because it was pouring with rain and we probably would have had to postpone. COVID checklist, another obvious one at the moment. But I've also said pre-visit with teachers and discussion around the role of adult helpers. This makes a huge difference, as I'm sure you're all aware, indoors. And once again, the impact of it, the impact of distractions outdoors are even greater. So I'd really encourage talking with the teachers. The ultimate is if they can pre-visit your location, of course, but that's not always possible. so a phone call or a video conference call like this, and talking about encouraging them to give jobs to the adults, the parents that are coming along, to make sure they're briefed before you come out. But what I do here is we actually do a little parent briefing when they arrive as well. And really, that's about thanking the parents for coming along, because the students wouldn't be able to go on a trip without the support of the parents. But it's also setting out a few guidelines like trust the educators. We know what we're doing, you know. Would ask that you engage with what we're doing and support the students. If you are doing a guided style day, you might want those parents throughout the group rather than all bunched at the back. When you're stopping to do an activity, engage those parents in the activity as well. The last thing you want is for a mobile phone to go and for the parent to have a business conversation right there at the back very loudly, making it difficult for you to continue, or for a group of adults to perhaps converge at the back, all having their own conversation, because that's role modeling to the students. Oh, we don't need to be doing this activity. We can have our own conversation to the side too. So I approach it from a positive point of view to thank those parents and ask them to engage in the program. But of course, it's about helping you be really efficient and achieve more with the students. The day is actually enriched by their engagement. So I'd let them know that as well. A little story I can think of is we used to teach the students how to use a GPS unit on Rotorua Island, and we'd be in a building giving them the basics of how to use it before we send them out into a controlled area. But the parents, the look on their faces when I would hand a GPS unit to each parent as well, they would be quite surprised that they were expected to learn how to use it. But once they did, they would love it, and you would see them out there with the students problem solving and making that activity run so much better for everybody, which was really, really fun, actually. Okay, dedicated roles, and this is fairly obvious. If you are doing a guided experience or you're trying to move the students from A to B, it's really important to have someone at the tail end, obviously. A timekeeper or a way to keep time for yourself, behavior management. So it might be important where that teacher is positioned as well to help you, at the front or at the back, in the middle. Where does that work for you? And someone to organize equipment, make sure it's put away, counted back in, those sorts of things. And be clear who the activity leader is if you're working together as well. That makes a big difference, so there's not confusion amongst the group. Communication, if you are out and about, sometimes we do a rotation style. We need a way to time keep and make sure we're not going to bump into each other, those sorts of things. So we actually use radios to make sure we've got communication between educators. Placement of your group, again, seems quite simple. And in a classroom, I'm sure you would set up your space of where you're going to deliver from, where the activities are going to take place, how do the students sit, are they on the mat in front of you, are they sitting around in seats, those kinds of things. Knowing what you hope to do in an outdoor scenario is really important too, because you imagine going out into a beautiful open space and just everyone scatters. It's all over at that point. So if students can see, for example, how you've set something up, where they're going to sit, that really helps with the management as well. So perhaps they're going to sit, perhaps they're going to bob down or kneel, perhaps they're going to be standing. Are they in a line? Are they in a semicircle? Do they know what a semicircle is? How could you show them or describe it in different ways so that you can get that happening nice and efficiently? Okay. The other question is, how are you going to get the attention of your group? And I'm sure this is, again, something we all need to deal with because we don't know the class that's coming to us oftentimes. I'm a small person and I don't have a big loud voice. So this is really important. I need to figure out how in an outdoor open environment where my voice perhaps doesn't carry well, how am I going to get the attention of the group? So one way is just to learn very quickly what the classroom teacher does and use that, or have your classroom teacher give you a hand to start with as well. Toilets seems pretty obvious as well, but it's a really important thing. You know, can you imagine being out on a trip and being an hour into a walk, really needing the bathroom and not knowing if you're going to be able to get to one? Imagine if your students are thinking that the whole way, that's what they're thinking, rather than enjoying the learning. So ensuring that you're really clear about when those breaks will happen, or what to do if you need to use the toilet. Please tell an adult straight away, those sorts of things. Really basic, but really important. If they've got backpacks, are they carrying them? Do you have a place for them to store them? Drink bottles in the outdoors. This is an interesting one. In the summer, obviously, staying hydrated is really important, particularly when you're doing lots of physical activity. However, you can also have the whole walking along and flipping the bottle, doing the bottle flip, swinging it, whoops, it hit somebody else in the head, disasters. So just thinking about those basics and how you're going to manage them really helps. So it might be that they know when their next break is going to be, because you can do an hour-long walk, for example, without needing your drink the whole way along. Of course, like you already do, I'm sure, check for prior learning, prior knowledge, or any burning questions at the beginning. And as you go, really praise and encourage that behaviour that you want to see that's helping to keep the learning experience going in the lines that you're hoping for as well. So for us, we've got a lot of hillsides. So there's a lot of, oh, I can't get up the hill, it's too hard. So imagine, you know, how proud of yourself you're going to be when you reach that point there, or something like that. And then it changes the attitude of the students as well. Okay, there was a lot on that slide, thank you. Just a couple of examples for setup purposes. This doesn't look terribly exciting, I realise in the photo, but this building here is within the forest here. So you can see to one side the forest coming through some panels. So it's a sheltered space, but it's surrounded by the forest, surrounded by the beautiful bird song, our manu in the forest here. So this was set up this time last year. We were level 1, but you can see I still had hand sanitizer there for as the students entered to use. So I put myself on the top of those steps to make myself a little bit taller so I could welcome them in, give them the basic instructions. On they came and we did a standing activity first. And then once the standing activity was finished, we sat on mats. So in the picture, I hope you can see some black and white mats to the side. These are pretty inexpensive and they're really helpful. Even if you were going outside to sit under a tree, perhaps, if it's not the best sunny day, take one of those with you. Even a parent can carry it, it's pretty light. Pop it down, students know where they're going to sit. Easy as that. The green area up the front there, it's a bit far away to see, but that's just a strip of fake grass that I use. That's my area. So if I've got things I don't want the students to touch until I've given instructions or something to that effect, it goes up there, and that's where I start from, so that we've got known areas and we all know what's happening. Cool. Excellent. I think I'm just going to zoom in a bit for you because I was just delighted by the fact that there's a little robin in that picture on the green, if you can see it. Pitoi, North Island robin. There he is. Quite often when I'm setting up and packing up, this little guy comes to visit. I don't know if it's the same one, but to me it seems like it is. And there you go. Just wanted to share how cool he is. Carrying on. And here's sort of a setup with all the mats on the floor. Because it was starting to get cold, we have carpet squares to just add a little bit of insulation there as well. And if you just focus on the yellow sign, I did not have a fancy professionally done sign here, but this is my way of communicating to other members of the public what the space is being used for. So it says education tour in this case, but it might be that you have a sign where you can say, welcome, such and such school. Your session is at 10:30 today till 11 or something like that. That way members of the public can choose whether they are around where there's a big school group or not. Some do like to listen in, actually, learn a little bit too. Others might choose to stay away from that area while you're there, but it's just a simple communication tool where you're sharing the space. Cool. Next one. This just shows a defined area. So some students simply doing some bark rubbings here. They were from our local school in actual fact. This space here, I can see boundaries that I can give to the students. So they know where they're working, but they've got choice within that, which is really cool. Next one. Similar story here. It's actually a clearing at the end of that walkway there. It's like a dead end, a cul-de-sac. So the students are doing a food chains activity or something there, but they know that they've got that space and it's defined. Cool. And this is, it amuses me, this version of walking along in a line, but they were actually purposely trying to space themselves apart there. But just a reminder that if you're moving in a guided style, to have organisation within your group, someone at the back, so you don't lose anybody. Thank you. Another little tip would be to have resources in place if you can. So the example I'm showing here is that we have an area in our wetland called the tuatarium, where our tuatara are. When you get there, there's actually some bench seats arranged in a semicircle, and there's a couple of places where we've sort of hidden resources, and they're in a waterproof container. So these students from Blake Inspire on this occasion are looking at a 3D printed tuatara skull. And with the younger students, say intermediate year 9, year 10, we have expert cards. So it's something I can easily pop in the backpack. And a waterproof bags are great too, actually. You can put that in place and it will stay waterproof, obviously, the gear inside. So a smaller number of students go into where the tuatara are and have a close observational opportunity with the educator. Meanwhile, the teacher with the other students can be in this defined area and use the resources that we have in place there. So that just really facilitates that experience really easily, and it's already there. But I would recommend having a backpack or a bag over your shoulder if that's what you prefer, with a few resources in it up your sleeve, basically, if you're out and about in the environment with school kids. Cool. Akonga. All right, so that toolbox might look like, and you might already have these things in your classroom spaces or gallery spaces, etc. Already, but simple things like activity cards that you could pull out and use at any time, or sentence starters that perhaps you provide parents to help the students. I don't tend to use it so much here, but I have in other places. The little portable show me boards, the whiteboards, can be handy for quick responses or photographs of responses when you're out in the field. And carrying things like, if there are taonga props that you're able to bring with you, it's a good idea to bring those to support stories that you're telling or learning objectives that you're looking at. You can do stop, look and listen anywhere, of course, or activities around using the senses. Have games up your sleeves, maybe have something that you play a mystery object game with, memory game. Class photos, generally the classes like to have a photo or two throughout their trip, regardless of where they are, or using things like continuums, which is simply asking questions and they place themselves along that line. So you don't need any physical resources for that. Obviously, some of these will be more appropriate at different times in the sequence of your learning experience as well. So something like knee to knee, think, pair, share, or one word response circle might be more appropriate as a reflection activity nearer the end. Cool. So just one more thing on that last slide actually that I'll mention is just, it may be that you have, you've got your learning experience already planned, or your guided tour experience that you're going to do, but it's helpful to have extras in a backpack, because you might, if you're in a shared environment, come across a situation where you plan to go to a particular place and you can't because there's another group of public or something there. So for us, for example, we might get to the tower in the forest, and all the kids love going up the tower, of course, but there's a limit of how many people can go up there. And imagine you get there and there's a group of wonderful members of the public having a picnic lunch at the top. It means that we'd need to wait or change tact or something like that, which we do using objects like this, being flexible within that plan as well. All right, so I'm into the last section, everybody, just so you know. What I'd like to just finish off with is sharing a framework, which is really a framework of interpretation. So this is more about guided tours and delivering guided tour interpretation. Okay, So I have done guided tours here at the mountain myself before, but I find that there are skills that cross over for sure between working with school groups and members of the public on a tour. And this is a framework that can help with that. So this framework is the EROT framework, originally called the EROT framework in 1992 by Dr. Sam Han, and it's been renamed the TOR method, also by the same person in 2013. And what I will mention as well is that this particular framework, not just Sam Han, but also other interpreters as well, this method that they've created is strongly influenced by views of constructivist learning theorists, so strongly influenced by Piaget and Vygotsky. So they say when interpretation is strongly relevant to its audience, it is likely to provoke thinking and elaboration. Okay, so there are 4 key components, which I'll just briefly take you through. T, thematic, O, organized, R, relevant, and E, enjoyable, of course. So we'll briefly go through those. There we go. Interpretation has a theme. So a major point or message is what that is about. And for us, that may well be what the learning intentions look like for that session, that discussion you've had with the teacher about what you've got to share, and also what their local curriculum looks like, bringing those together. For me, it might look like my key conservation messages and the story of Sanctuary Mountain and what it's all about, and being kaitiaki of our environment. So having a theme can help you decide what to include and what to exclude, and what to put an emphasis on. So just encourage everybody, if you're thinking about doing a guided experience, which could also be indoors in actual fact, for all the exhibits, the activities, the stories, all of those resources you have available to you, ask how will they contribute to conveying this overall theme. A theme also reminds us that as we move through and use these exhibits and resources, it's not for us to stand and just recount lots of facts, particularly facts that don't contribute to the theme. So there's a bit of a guideline which says most people are capable of handling 4 or fewer pieces of information for a given theme. Okay, next one. Oh, interpretation is organized. Well, we're all pretty good at that as educators, I would say. But what prior knowledge do you have about your group and their interests? What have they been learning about at school? How does their visit fit in to that? And make sure that we organize props and resources and activities that are going to assist us with meeting their needs. And to also be aware of what's happening in the environment, seasonal changes, new developments, that kind of thing. So for us at the moment, I've put a relevant picture there. Just yesterday, I took some beautiful photos and put them on Instagram, actually, of this beautiful white paw fungus that's showing up in the forest. Autumn to winter, beautiful time for fungi in the forest. Cool. All right, and interpretation is relevant. So relevant to the site, that's immediate, relevant to the individuals, and we can help enhance the relevancy or the understanding of ideas through the use of analogies and comparisons. So I've put a little one up there for you. Beautiful riro, grey warbler, and a $1 coin. What have they got to do with each other? Well, the grey warbler, riro, is our second smallest bird in New Zealand. Rifleman, titiponamu, is the smallest, but they actually weigh about the same amount. And if you were ever lucky enough to hold a riro in your hand, it would weigh less than a $1 coin. There's a pretty simple prop you could have with you if you were hearing. Of course, grey warbler are actually fairly common, so you might hear them outside where you are. So a simple prop, a $1 coin to have with you when you hear that beautiful call. And the little students, the little picture, I should say, of wonderful rangatahi there are looking at a grey warbler's nest there. All right, so information that's relevant and connects with our audience. Lastly, interpretation is enjoyable. And I'm sure we all strive to make sure our learning experiences are enjoyable, of course. So use some humor, tell some stories, have some fun. The learning experience is not a test. Generally, it's not a test when they come to visit us. So I would suggest avoid simply walk and talk, which is similar to the whole stand up the front and just tell. Try and avoid that and involve the students where you can. Use their senses, use props, and let your enthusiasm and passion shine through. Of course, when I say senses and props and you can see students handling something there, you will all be putting your COVID lens over that in terms of health and safety as well. But where you can, all of these things make a big difference. Nice. Oh, yes. This is one that has been shared with me that I think is really important as well. Kaua e mahaki. Do not flaunt your knowledge. Knowledge should be shared in empowering ways, and I certainly think that's really important. Believe that too. And last one. So someone that I've looked up to who turned 96 recently, Sir David Attenborough, he says, no one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. So I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tali. That was so cool. I have been fortunate to hear a bit of this beforehand, but we were preparing for this webinar. But I'm still so excited, and I need to follow up so many things that you've shared. Thank you so much, Tali. I haven't seen too many questions at the moment. I think you've answered so many questions as we went along. But please feel free to our audience put any of your questions in the chat. And I'm going to start us off with one bit because I'm really interested. Let's imagine, Tali, you were an educator who usually teaches inside, and you've done that before. What do you reckon would be the first step if you wanted to think about making use of the outdoor space as you teach? Where would you start?
I could share where I started. When I first was teaching at Auckland Zoo, all of the education sessions happened inside a classroom. And a new manager came on board and we moved into using the classroom, but also using the outdoor environment. So I was teaching secondary at the time. So what I tried was things like 20 minutes, half an hour in the classroom around the topic how I may have done it before, for example, animal behavior. And then I would try one activity outside that links to that for the rest of the session time. So group size is something I should have written in the slides actually, is really crucial as well. At Auckland Zoo, I could have 90 students at a time in a lecture theatre, and that's nigh on impossible outdoors. So what I did was then schedule in class size group or half class size groups a time where they met me at a particular outdoor enclosure, and we did an observation there. So that was how I dipped my toes into it, if you like. In terms of doing a guided experience outdoors, I really recommend finding someone who's done it before and working with them. That makes a huge difference. And of course, go to the site, plan it yourself first, perhaps plan something, and then maybe bring the rest of your team out and deliver it as if they're the students and see what happens and learn from a little bit of trial and error before you have a go with the class. Yeah.
Oh, that's super advice, and that's really useful advice for any of us as we're moving into a different area, maybe a new exhibition, a new job, a new role, a new site, culture and heritage site that we're working at or that's been opened. Thank you so much for the tip of starting with something you do inside and take that outside. Just wondering if there's anybody who's got a question, anybody who would like to, you can even take the mic right now if you would like. It's a small enough group that we could do that.
I'll also mention shadowing somebody else. So go and watch somebody else in action outdoors as well. Could be another great learning opportunity for yourself.
I think you might get a few shadows from me. There's a few of us who are going like, oh, I want to see how Tali does that. Helen, did you see any other questions come up? Oh, Helen, actually, yeah, found one. Have you had any tricky moments outside, Tali? Is there anything you can talk
Yes,
about?
yes, of course. Probably many. Let me see. So one thing I learned in the last couple of years actually was it's happened more than once. There was an incident where all was going well, and there was a student, I think, on the autism spectrum, that something triggered that student, and they just ran. They took off, and that moment is quite scary because you think, okay, what do I do now? The most important thing is you've identified that before the trip and a teacher aide or parent has come on the trip and they are with that student the whole time. But one incident happened where they took off. It was actually from a class that I wasn't working with, but I was the lead educator on the day. And I found out from my teacher who had got a phone call that this had happened. And I said, have you got the phone number of the teacher aide who's followed the child? No, they didn't. So to me, that was a big learning experience, and why I'm emphasizing that preparation beforehand is that even amongst the adults or key adults of a school group, do they have each other's phone number? Something as simple as that. All worked out well, I should say. It was fine. The teacher aide had just walked the student back to the visitor centre, which is great. But it reminds me that, you know, teacher aides, if there's a particular something you know could occur, that you address that beforehand, but also as soon as the group arrives, you have a shared plan. I often inform our visitor centre staff as well that, hey, you might see a teacher and a student return today, so they just know to expect it, and that's fine. They will just accommodate them and make sure that, you know, they have a map, they have a gate. We have a gate key, for example, and I make sure the teacher aide has one. Those sorts of things. Yeah. How's that? That's a good
That,
one.
that's yeah, that's scary and well dealt with. I'm so glad that it turned out all right.
Yes. Yes. I
Kelsey
just
just had a
kept
question.
calm.
Yeah, Kelsey just had a question. I haven't quite read it yet, so I'm just going to read it off from here. She says it's slightly unrelated, but they are expanding their children's gallery at Pataka to include content related to Mana Island. It's still in planning stages, but we'd love to know the best way we can collaborate with dog or outdoor educators related to this content moving forward. We know you've
Mm,
worked with Tash quite a lot. What can you recommend for people? How can they get others involved in their new programs?
yes, that's a good question, actually. I'm fortunate to have connected with Tash, as you mentioned. She's a community ranger here. So perhaps just contact your local DOC office, find out who the community ranger is for the area. There may well be rangers who live on the island or location, and perhaps contact with those people would be great as well. Yeah, I'm fortunate that those relationships have been part of the planning process for me in the past. So meeting other stakeholders that are around a project, the DOC representatives, the island rangers, those sorts of things, coming together around having a hui together makes a big difference. Just getting together and early days on Rotorua, for example, we were invited out there, and the people already involved out on that island did a bit of a sort of show and tell for us and took us for a walk, and that was the beginning of the relationship and learning about the island, that sort of thing.
Cool, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for that. Actually, what do you love? And I'm gonna borrow this from Helen. Cassie just said, "Fantastic, thank you so much." So awesome. Helen asked earlier, and I want to know too. What do you love most about teaching outdoors?
Oh, well, I guess the well-being aspect, you benefit from that yourself. But for me, it's those special moments where you see the students, the akonga, connect as well. So a beautiful story from about a week ago, I took some year 11 boys, all boys class. They were here for geography. We went to the wetland and we went to see if we could see our takahe. And to some, this is just a bird. It's a big bird. We know how special it is, but in that moment, the year 11 boys were just transfixed, and they were following my direction. All was good. They weren't going too close. They stopped if I asked them to, but their instinct was to creep closer and get down low and see how close they could get to it and observe these beautiful birds, and they didn't want to leave. And
Wow.
I essentially said nothing apart from manage the behavior. I didn't need to stand there and say a whole lot of facts about the birds in that moment because they were observing it and asking the questions. And it's pretty special to see that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so great. Thanks so much, Tali. I think we stop the questions here now and go to the end of the webinar. But what I want to say to everybody who's listening in today, if you're interested in the outdoor education space, if you're interested in well-being, if you've got further questions for Tali, or if there's anybody else who's already using those tour principles, do reach out to us. We always have Mel's email address on the end of the slides, mel.thompson@tptmt.com. If there's any questions for Tali, we'll definitely pass them on. Otherwise, you can see on the slide here, she's at Sanctuary Mountain, and you can find that on the website if you want to contact her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, so it's time for us to have a look at what's happening next week. Next week, we'll have our webinar with Ricky Preble, Imogen Ryder, and Tereora Crane, and it's titled Navigating Emotions When Teaching Our Histories. They will share with us some of the ways they deal with the emotions attached to learning about our histories. This webinar is part of our series of webinars to support teaching Aotearoa New Zealand's history. So we really look forward to seeing you all back there next week. Please also keep an eye out for more information about our first free online course, which will go live on the Future Learn platform by the end of this month. So we're quite excited about that. Once again, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Tali. This has been just amazing, and your resources are going to be super helpful to all of us. Those of us who are new in the field, those of us who have been around the block a few times, we're all going to go back into those resources. So thank you once again. And to anyone in the audience, if you would like to revisit the webinar, the recording will be on YouTube probably tomorrow, and on our website as well, including the resources that Tali has shared. All that's left to do is close us off with karakia. Ono hia, ono hia. Ono hia ki te oro tapanui. Kia wātea, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairoa I te ara takata. Ka rā I rongo, whakairea ake ki runga. Kia tina, uie, tāiki. Kia ora whānau once again for attending this webinar. We really appreciate your support and your enthusiasm as you take this learning away to your own learners around the country. And we'll see you again next week on Thursday. Kei ko hei kona.